What is the difference between borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder? Here to talk about the differences is the expert, Dr. Ramani. I'm gonna make a confession to you. I am absolutely fascinated with the topic of narcissism ever since we did those first videos on narcissism. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I think it's the topic of our time. I really do. More than any other clinical issue, it is the topic of our time, because either you're dealing with it as a clinical issue in a client, or you're dealing with the fallout of it and everyone around them.
Yeah, you're not immune
everyone's
from
affected.
it. That's right.
No one's immune.
And I didn't fully understand it until I sat down and talked with you. So if you think you understand narcissism, go watch that video. Dr. Ramani will link it below. Then you will really fully understand it. It was fascinating. How is borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder different?
That's the question of the day. It's a brilliant question because there's a lot of overlap. So when we look at the core of what narcissistic personality is, it's characterized by a person who lacks empathy for other people, who's grandiose, who's entitled, who's very superficial, who's always seeking out validation, who's arrogant, who's often prone to rage. Okay? At the core of it, though, a narcissist is one thing and one thing only, and that's deeply insecure. They're insecure, so they want everyone else to feel insecure, but they're just not in touch with their insecurity, so it expresses, and basically they just don't connect with anybody else. But they're also very charming, they're very charismatic, they seem very confident, so they're confusing little
And I don't want to get too off topic here because we could talk about this all the day.
Right.
But that's different from a sociopath.
Very different from a sociopath. Big difference, here's the main difference,
Yeah.
simple. When a sociopath or a psychopath does something bad, they don't feel remorse. Narcissist does, they feel shamed.
Wow.
They feel shamed. So there's your big difference.
Okay.
Now, let's bring this back to borderline personality. Because for a lot of people with borderline personality, at first blush, they can actually look quite narcissistic. As a rule, they do tend to lack empathy. They either over-identify with other people's feelings or they under-identify with them, meaning that if their feelings are on the same page as that other person's, it's as though they don't even see the boundary between them and the other person. They get so immersed in them. But if there's a time when that other person's feelings don't line up with theirs, it's as though you're looking into a black mirror, like there's nothing reflecting back. So that can feel narcissistic. You'll see an entitlement in borderline personality, like, how come I can't have my way? It'll feel like a tantrum. And that will feel like almost like a childlike entitlement. There'll also be sort of a seductive feel we sometimes see in borderline personality, which isn't surprising because they very much crave intimacy, but they don't know always how to get it. So seduction is often the easiest and fastest way to get there. Narcissists and borderlines both are very seductive. So you see some commonalities. Both, you see a lot of that rage. Both of them are very prone to rage. With the borderline, it comes up very quickly.
Right.
With the narcissist, it can also come up quickly. For the person with narcissistic personality, though, it's a threat to their ego. How dare you tell me I'm not the best at this? Whereas for a person with borderline personality, it's more of it's a hypersensitivity to the self. But it's still quick rage in either case.
That's so hard to diagnose.
Yeah, but here's where the big differences are. People with narcissistic personality don't have that identity disturbance. They know who they are all the time. They don't have that sense of, am I this, am I that? They don't jump around in their identity.
Yeah, they're not changing their name. They're not changing their hair color every day.
They're not doing that.
Yeah.
In addition, the narcissist doesn't like being abandoned, but they don't walk away frightened of it. They don't walk around like, oh my God, I'm going to be abandoned.
Right.
They get angry. Somebody abandons them, they get like, you're doing what to me? Are you kidding me? I'll break up with you first kind of thing. Yeah. It's a much more of a swagger in your face in the face of abandonment. I'm not saying they like it, but for the person with borderline personality, it's a fear.
That's right.
An almost infantile fear. Right. So there is a greater fragile quality to the person with borderline personality versus the person with narcissistic personality. Think of a person with borderline as more infantile, and a person with narcissistic personality is more like a toddler. Does that make sense? Toddlers throw tantrums, borderlines scream when the mom leaves the room. There's almost like more of a need for more care with the borderline person than the narcissistic person, who's almost behaving more like a mean-spirited, spoiled child.
So someone cannot possibly be then diagnosed with both.
As a rule, we wouldn't diagnose both. What we would do is we look and see where the traits overlap, which we always see them overlap. They live in the same group of disorders in the DSM.
They're in the same house, they're in different rooms though.
Exactly, same
Okay.
house, different rooms. And so there's a greater vulnerability in borderline personality. That's
Okay.
really what we see.
If a borderline personality, someone with borderline personality disorder started dating someone with narcissistic personality disorder,
Leave the room quickly. It's going to be volatile. It is going to be vindictive. And here's what's so
zero
hard.
chance of success?
Not only zero chance of success, it's heartbreaking. I have consulted on these kinds of situations because what do you have? A person with borderline personality who's terrified of being abandoned, and a narcissist who's not empathic and who is cold.
I mean,
It's just,
there's no
and
way.
ironically, they attract each other.
Yes.
They often attract each other.
So what's your advice for those people? Break up and find somebody else?
I would say if you get into your own individual therapy, do lots of work on yourself, but these are two clinical conditions where people often aren't drawn into the treatment, especially narcissistic personality. It is very rare for them to enter any form of psychotherapy unless something is going wrong in their life. Their marriage is falling apart, they have issues with addiction, they're having problems at work. Those are the things that will pull them in, not, hey, I did something wrong, but how come the world is so mean to me?
Yeah.
It's very much that.
Right.
And so, yeah, they do find each other. It's
And no
a very
accountability
volatile
on either
situation.
end? Or do borderline...
People with borderline personality will take that accountability as a way to keep that other person from abandoning them. It's almost like they'll try every technique they can to draw that person close. A person with narcissistic personality tends to engage more in projection, so they blame the other person for everything that's wrong in the relationship. This is your fault, you did this, you did this, you did this. And the person with borderline personality will first scream, no, I didn't, no, I didn't. And then they might cop to it just to keep that person close.
So in other videos, we've talked a lot about what do you do to help this person who might be BPD or who might be a narcissist. I want to flip the script and say, what do you do for yourself if you are working with this coworker? You're not going to recommend therapy to them. It's not appropriate for whatever reason, but you still got to deal with someone who's a narcissist or someone who has borderline personality disorder. What are the tips?
Easy. 2 easy tips for everyone who's
easy.
listening. 2, manage your expectations and maintain watertight boundaries. That's it. So when I say manage your expectations, please don't expect that you're going to come to work tomorrow and they're going to get it, that they're going to understand your point of view. They don't have empathy. Okay, it's not wired there. So no, they're not going to understand your point of view. They're, in fact, if anything, they're going to probably put the lion's share of the blame on you. They're not going to take responsibility. What that means is, for example, if it's a coworker, you better keep really great documentation. So when it comes down to brass tacks, you can say, no, actually, I did do it. Here's the email showing it, kind of thing. So you really do have to, again, maintain boundaries, but also cover your own bases. But ultimately, managing expectations means that you don't keep getting your heart broken 1,000 times over. These are very, very difficult kinds of personality and behavioral patterns, and they really are not particularly amenable to change in a big way. Can a really skilled therapist work with a motivated client
Motivated,
with borderline
keyword.
and narcissistic personality and make some progress? Yes, motivated being the key word. However, that's a therapist with a client, and you may create these little changes that might actually help the client with narcissism or borderline personality. However, the person who still has to live with them, the rages are never going to completely go away. The projection is never going to completely go away. And I think that's the heartbreaking part of it for partners, family members, friends, and coworkers. So you got to do you.
Well, and I think there is some responsibility on those of us who do not have these disorders but are interacting with people who do, that we understand it's a clinical diagnosis. It's not like they can fix it, they just don't want to. It's not like they're just being difficult. It's just part of what's in them.
That's right. But however, other people don't need to be martyrs. You know, I think that where this gets to be a very tricky balancing act is, I don't know, and I don't believe, honestly, philosophically, that one human being should become a human sacrifice in the face of somebody who has this kind of a personality
What do you mean by
pattern.
that?
Meaning that you keep enduring abuse, you keep enduring rage, you keep enduring having your reality tested on an hourly basis because they have this clinical pattern. That's not right either. I have watched people lose custody of their children and they were good parents simply because our legal and justice systems and our family court systems aren't able to recognize these patterns. I've seen too much hurt come from this. So this is where I'm saying that while as a therapist, I recognize and I very much welcome into my practice and the work I do to work with clients who have these personality patterns. I do also work with people who are on the other side, on the survivor side, if you will, to say, you are not a human punching bag. And there may be a point at which you need to draw the line in the sand and step away for your self-preservation. That's a very difficult journey, and that requires a person who's sort of a survivor of one of these relationships, you're on the other side, to be in your own individual therapy, to be guided and not maintain false hopes, but be very realistic with expectations and boundaries.
I can see why your wait list for new clients is 3 months long. That was so eye-opening, wonderful. Dr. Ramani, it is always such a privilege and an honor to sit across from you and talk. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Your next step is to head on over to MedCircle.com and sign up for the MedCircle Digest. What is it? Well, MedCircle will send you the latest articles and the latest videos on the mental health topics that matter most to you. So go to MedCircle.com, sign up for that digest, and let's keep this journey on better mental health moving forward.